647,017. That is the number of Internet-exposed N8N workflow automation instances that an attacker's software counted on its own before deciding whether any of them were worth attacking. It narrowed that to 25,209 in one country, sampled about 100 of those, read the CVE, checked how popular the project was on GitHub, and then wrote, in its own session log, and I'm quoting a machine here, "The N8N one with 258 stars in CVSS 10.0 looks extremely promising." That log is public now because the agent running the operation started a web server in its own home directory and served its operator's entire toolkit to the internet. Palo Alto's Unit 42 walked in the open front door and took notes. I am Cole Drayden. This is Dark Perimeter. With me, as always, Dr. Elliott Vance, who is going to tell us what that report actually establishes and what it does not, and Marcus Hale, who is going to tell us what changes on Monday morning, which I suspect is less than the headlines suggest and more than we would like. Last week we talked about the 48-hour window, about response time collapsing. This week is not about speed. This week is about who is choosing the target.
Let me set the boundaries of the claim first, because this is a story that gets oversold in both directions. Unit 42 published this on July 30th and updated it on August 11th. The actor operates under the handles Nathan Kanyuan, is assessed to be based in Zhuhai, China, and describes himself publicly as a binary security researcher. He runs an automated vulnerability intelligence pipeline he calls One Day News, which scrapes newly disclosed remote code execution bugs and pushes alerts out over Telegram. That part is not new. Bug feeds have existed for 20 years. What is new is the layer on top. He wired DeepSeek as the reasoning engine into an orchestration framework called Hermes Agent, which gave the model a terminal, a Telegram command and control channel, and a set of custom skills. And then he pointed it at the internet. The agent enumerated targets through FOFA, which is essentially a Chinese Shodan. It assessed and prioritized vulnerabilities. It downloaded public exploit code on its own initiative. It attempted exploitation. And when a target class did not pan out, it pivoted to a different CVE based on its own read of deployment scale. That is the full loop, and it ran without a human in it.
And the OPSEC failure that gave us all of this?
The agent started a file server in its home directory. Tool configurations, API keys, exploit scripts, session logs, all of it exposed. Unit 42 recovered a single complete Hermes session dated May 7th. That is the artifact that lets us say any of this with confidence rather than inference. I want to be precise. We are not reasoning from telemetry and guessing at intent. We have the operator's own environment.
Okay, but let me be the person in the room who has to brief a board on this, because there is a number in that report that is doing a lot of work and almost nobody is quoting it. What did the autonomous part actually accomplish?
Nothing.
Say that again, slower.
The autonomous exploitation attempts failed. The agent went after Langflow, CVE-2026-20349, and did not get in because auto-login was disabled on the targets. It went after N8N, CVE-2026-21858, and CVE-2026-88613, one of which is a CVSS 10.0, and did not get in because authentication was required. Unit 42 says it plainly. The autonomous attempts did not achieve full compromise of any of their intended targets.
And the compromises that did happen?
All manual. Every confirmed impact in that report has a human hand on it. Data exfiltration from 3 Citrix NetScaler targets via CVE 2026-3055. Command execution confirmed on 11 Marimo notebook instances via CVE 2026-39987. Java deserialization attempts against 9 Apache Tomcat servers. That is CVE 2026-34486, which we will come back to. Reverse shell callbacks against 3 IKE VPN endpoints, and a sustained multi-day operation against a Malaysian government entity with proxy anonymization added on later attempts, which is a very human thing to do after you realize you were noisy the first time.
So the headline writes itself as AI launches autonomous cyber attack. And the actual finding is AI launched autonomous cyber attack and was bad at it, while its owner did the real damage by hand.
Which is the correct read of the evidence and completely the wrong lesson to walk away with. Cole, I have sat in the meeting where somebody says, the AI attacks failed, so we have time. That meeting is how you end up 18 months behind. Read the sentence Unit 42 actually wrote at the end because they were careful with it.
While the observed campaign had limited impacts, the workflow confirms a functional end-to-end autonomous offensive capability.
Workflow, not weapon. That is the word that matters. What got demonstrated here is not that a model can pop a box. Models have been able to run public exploits for 2 years. What got demonstrated is that the boring, expensive human part of an intrusion campaign, the part where somebody sits there for a week deciding what is worth attacking out of 600,000 candidates, that part now runs unattended. The exploitation failed because those specific targets were configured correctly. Configuration drift is a fact of the universe. The targeting worked.
Elliott. There is a detail in the toolkit inventory I want you to unpack because I think it says something about where this is going. He was not just running DeepSeek.
He was evaluating a market. Alongside the Hermes and DeepSeek stack, which did the autonomous work, the environment showed limited usage of Claude Code running Opus through a proxy, Codex running GPT 5.4 through a proxy, and several Chinese market models, QuenCode, GLM, Kimi, Minimax. The Western tools were routed through a proxy service to reduce traceability, and anti-attribution settings were configured across all of them. Unit 42 is explicit that they cannot verify actual usage of the Codex path because the operator configured the system to limit local response storage. They flagged the correlation between trusted directories and successful campaigns as notable. Notable is doing honest work there. It is an assessment, not a finding.
And the provider side?
Unit 42 credits OpenAI with confirming that their provider-side safeguards refused requests that violated policy and that continued attempts caused their safety systems to flag and disable an account they believe is linked to this campaign. So the guardrails engaged. And the operator's response to guardrails engaging was to keep a domestic model in the driver's seat and treat the Western frontier models as optional accessories.
Which is the part I would put in the board deck. Not AI is attacking us. The line is, refusal at the frontier lab does not remove the capability. It roots around it. Your threat model cannot depend on somebody else's terms of service.
Let us put this against the volume story, because they collide this week in a way I do not think is coincidental. Tuesday was Patch Tuesday.
And the number depends on who you ask, which I want to name, rather than paper over. CrowdStrike's analysis counts 415 vulnerabilities. Security Week counts 421. The gap is accounting, mostly around how republished and extended security update CVEs get tallied. And neither outlet is wrong so much as they are counting different things. If you want a defensible number to put in a slide, say roughly 420, and cite which count you used. For scale, July was 622. August is a decrease.
August is a decrease. Sit with that.
One vulnerability under active exploitation, CVE 2026-68820, a use after free in afd.sys, the ancillary function driver for WinSock, CVSS 7.0, local privilege escalation, low privileged attacker to system, no user interaction, triggered by winning a race condition with a crafted application. Microsoft confirmed exploitation in the wild, and CISA added it to the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog on August 12th, the day after. 62 criticals in the set, 3 publicly disclosed. Elevation of privilege is 42% of the batch. Remote code execution 26%. Information disclosure 20%.
afd.sys again.
Fourth time since 2022, Satnam Narang at Tenable made that point and raised the nation-state question, noting one of the prior afd.sys 0 days was linked to North Korea's Lazarus Group. I want to flag the epistemic status carefully. That is a researcher's inference from a pattern, not an attribution from an agency or a filing. It is a reasonable inference. It is not established.
Here's what I actually care about with that CVE, and it is not the attribution, it is a local privilege escalation. Every threat model I review still has a soft assumption buried in it that says local means less urgent because the attacker has to already be on the box. Fine, but go look at what we just spent 15 minutes talking about. The initial access half of the kill chain is the half being automated first because it is the half that is mass parallel and cheap to retry. If the front door is getting cheaper at scale, then the attacker has to already be on the box is not the discount it used to be. Local privilege escalation is the second stage of an attack, whose first stage is getting industrialized.
Which brings us to the edge and the third thread this week. Marcus, the things that actually got exploited in the wild in the last 7 days were not exotic.
They were load balancers and firewalls, which is where they always are. To that matter, Cisco CVE-2026-20349, CVSS 8.6, Secure Firewall ASA and Threat Defense, insufficient error checking while processing HTTP requests to the Remote Access SSL VPN service. An unauthenticated attacker sends malformed traffic. The device reloads. You have a denial of service on the box that terminates your remote access. ASA branches 9116, 918, 920, 922, 923, and 924, FTD 7.0, 7.2, 7.4, 7.6, 7.7, and 10.0. Management Center is not affected. There are no workarounds. You upgrade or you stay exposed. Cisco confirmed active exploitation, and to their credit, they found it in internal testing and also received an independent report from a researcher named Valerio Brusani, so this was not discovered by watching customers burn. Second, Progress Kemp LoadMaster CVE-2026-8037, CVSS 9.6, command injection through improper input handling in an escape quotes function, unauthenticated arbitrary command execution on the appliance across multiple endpoints. ESentire counted 792 exploitation attempts over 41 days from 65 unique IPs in 18 countries. Last activity, August 4th, and characterized the attempts as largely unsuccessful. CISA added it on August 7th with a federal deadline of August 10th under Binding Operational Directive 26-4, 3 days.
3 days on a device that by definition sits in front of everything.
And you cannot take it down during business hours, which is the entire problem in one sentence.
There is a thread connecting all of this that I think is the actual episode. Look at the Tomcat CVE 2026-34486. It is a CVSS 7.5. Missing encryption of sensitive data. Bypasses the encrypt interceptor cluster component. Fixed back in April in 11.021, 10.1.54, and 9.0.117. CISA added it to KEV on July 27th with an August 7th federal deadline, and it appears in the Unit 42 report as one of the CVEs this actor exploited by hand against 9 servers. Same with Langflow CVE 2026-9198, CVSS 9.8, unauthenticated code injection giving super user access on default deployments, versions 1.0.0 through 1.10.0, fixed in 1.10.1 in July. 650 exploitation attempts from 244 unique IPs across 41 countries starting July 6th.
So the same small set of bugs shows up in the agent's target list, in the Humans Manual campaign, in CISA's catalog, and in mass scanning telemetry.
Within weeks, that convergence is the finding. The bottleneck in offensive operations was never exploit development for this class of adversary. It was attention, deciding which of 420 new CVEs, on top of the standing backlog, is worth an afternoon. That decision is now being made by software cheaply, at a scale no human triage team matches, and it is converging on the same answers.
And on our side of the table, that decision is still a spreadsheet and a meeting. That is the asymmetry, not intelligence, not sophistication, throughput on the prioritization step.
So what do you actually do? Give me things a director can start this week, not a transformation program.
4, and none of them are new, which is rather the point. 1. Stop treating internet-facing appliance patching as change-managed infrastructure work, and start treating it as incident response. LoadMaster gave federal agencies 3 days. If your process cannot move an edge device inside a week, your process is the vulnerability. Pre-authorize the maintenance window now before you need it. 2. Inventory the AI and automation middleware. Langflow, N8N, Marimo, the agent frameworks your data science team installed on a Tuesday. These are the platforms showing up in this actor's target list, and they got installed outside your normal software intake because they looked like developer tooling rather than production infrastructure. Somebody at your company has an N8N instance on a public IP right now, and it is not in your CMDB. 3. The 2 failures that saved targets in the Unit 42 campaign were autologin disabled and authentication required. Default deny on new tooling. That is the whole control. It is unglamorous, and it beat an autonomous agent twice. 4. Assume mass, indiscriminate, well-informed target selection is now the baseline, including against organizations that previously reasoned they were too small or too boring. The agent in this report attacked Chinese domestic infrastructure indiscriminately in its own country because it had no concept of a target profile. Obscurity was never a control. It is now not even an accident that occasionally helps.
I would add a 5th, which is epistemic. When the next report lands, and it will, read what it establishes rather than what it suggests. This one is unusually well evidenced because of an operator mistake, and it still separates confirmed compromise from assessed usage. Most of what follows will not be that careful, and the temptation on both sides, vendors selling AI defense and skeptics dismissing AI offense, will be to flatten it.
Here is where I land. The story everyone will tell about this week is that an AI ran an attack campaign. That is not quite true, and the parts that are true are the least alarming parts. It tried, and it failed, and a human had to do the actual work. But the story underneath is the one that should keep you up. The economics of picking a victim changed. For as long as any of us have been doing this, being unremarkable was a real defense, not because anyone designed it that way, but because attention was scarce and attackers had to spend it somewhere. 647,000 instances counted, 100 sampled, a CVSS score and a GitHub star count weighed against each other by a machine that does not get bored and does not go home. Attention is not scarce anymore. Whatever protection you were getting from being one of many, you are not getting it now. Patch the load balancer. This is Dark Perimeter.